Perfect. Hello, hello. My name is Krista Wyatt, and I'm the Executive Director of timebanks.org. And also here is our team. There's Pam, wave over there. There's Eric, there's Chris, and there's Edgar. Thank you so much. Our town hall calls provide a space for all Time Bank members to foster connectivity through sharing each other's stories. When we're here sharing our stories, we're moving the movement and creating a more global community. We hope to provide a safe place to share our thoughts and dreams and where everyone is welcome and heard. This town hall call is the 5th of the series of calls that celebrates Time Banking's core values. As we know, our core values are traits and qualities that are not just worthwhile, they represent Time Bank's highest priorities, deeply held beliefs, and provide a foundation for building our communities. Today, we'll be discussing our third core value, reciprocity. We ask that we all be respectful of the fact that we are a group on this call seeking to share with and learn from the whole group, and to be respectful of each other's time. In the same spirit, please do not use this call as an opportunity to recruit others to take action with you. If you are a coordinator of the Time Bank seeking knowledge about managing a Time Bank, we suggest you join the Time for All Time Bank call. It's a global Time Bank designed specifically for coordinators and also hosts a monthly coordinator sharing call. It's the first Wednesday of every month. Pam, do you mind sharing that link? Thank you, thank you. Please know that we have muted all, and after we hear from Edgar and Chris, we will be opening the call for your stories, comments, and your thoughts. You will need to unmute yourself when doing so. We ask that you keep your story to 2 minutes or less, and if for some reason our call ends before we can hear your story, we welcome you back on our October 17th town hall when we will talk about the fourth core value, social networks. I'll turn the call over to you, Chris.
Okay, so we have a script, and here I am just listening, rapt to Krista, and I'm not picking up the script. So here we are, my turn now. I'm going to say a little bit about reciprocity and then turn it over to Edgar. So I actually decided I was going to do something. I was going to actually go into the internet, don't we all do this all the time these days, to find out what the internet said, what the world said about reciprocity. So first I did reciprocity, and there were all these quotes and quotes and quotes and quotes, and they were all about reciprocity, me to you, you to me, and about how important they are in relationships and so forth. And I thought, yeah, got that. But what about generalized reciprocity? So I put in generalized reciprocity, which is more about the group dynamic. And that was so interesting because suddenly the whole language changed, everything changed, and it was sort of embedded in economic thinking and economic theory and anthropology. And it was much more kind of formal and high level. I just found that really very, very interesting because time banking is this lovely mix of those two things, of one-to-one reciprocity and this idea of generalized reciprocity. And so I'm going to read to you what it's one of the things that I found, and then I'll pass over to Edgar for his thoughts and about reciprocity and time banking. So generalized reciprocity, it says, an exchange system common among societies of food collectors and contributes to their very survival. Generosity in those communities is the highest ideal. Hoarding and stinginess are seen as antisocial, and usually it takes place between family members or tribal members or close friends and involves the highest level of moral obligation. So in the US, however, it's seen as going on between parents and family, close family members. So I thought that was just so really interesting because it's like time banking is a middle space between those two things. It's not essential for survival, and it's much broader than family, close family members. And so with that, I'm going to turn over to Edgar.
Well, I think one of the things that time banking has done is to eliminate price in terms of a pay it forward. That any act of giving is of value. It's our slice of eternity. It's not a matter of scarcity. It's a matter of a willingness both to give and to be vulnerable and to be part of a larger community. It defines you not just as a sole actor, but it defines you as part of a kind of extended family where trust and where willingness just to be who you are is something that we celebrate. And so reciprocity really, I think, has been the core moving value behind time banking, because it says, don't just take, we need you to be a participant. You give when you receive help, but you give when you pay it forward by acknowledging that help and by accepting help from a stranger and by saying, I'm part of an extended family. And so I think the core value that drives time banking is reciprocity. And I would celebrate that because it's the opposite of what we see in politics. It's the opposite of what we see in market. It's the spirit of connectedness that we are, strangely things called human beings, who made it because we were here to help each other. Believe it or not, in the caves, we didn't have a pricing system for the reciprocity that has enabled us to survive. So I think it's the driving value and the survival spirit that we're celebrating, and we're elevating it to an economic principle, to a principle that can drive transactions, but can drive whole programs and can drive whole events.
And help to build a sense of community.
Yes, very much a sense of community.
Yes. So those are our thoughts on reciprocity, just to start this conversation going. And we would love to hear either your own thoughts on reciprocity or a story that illustrates it in your own experience of time banking, or something that you'd like to see happen in your time bank around reciprocity. But our focus today is this, and it could be one-to-one reciprocity, or it could be this generalized reciprocity, which you'll all be familiar with, which is time banking like a big pool, and you put in from the pool and you take out from the pool. And by lots of more and more people adding to the pool, it grows and grows and grows. So it's over to you guys, and whoever would like to speak. And I've been talking off script, so let me just double check that I've got the right script going. Oh, so we would like to share a couple of personal things before you, Edgar has just said, before we go forward. One is we just would like to, one of our board members, earlier board members, passed away last night, and we'd just like to honor her. Her name was Debra Frazier. She was absolutely a wonderful, wonderful soul and passionate about time banking. And we're very sad that she has passed away. And the second is that Edgar had a rather dramatic accident in the time since our last call. And if he turns his head to you, you see that he's sort of become, he has a Harry Potter kind of jagged scar on his head with 8 metal clasps, because a sculpture.
Can you imagine having 8 staples stapled into your head?
So
and being grateful for the experience, yes.
Well, it's a good thing that the wonders of medicine, that they could staple him together again. So here he is with this being fixed. So those are just 2 sort of rather dramatic, well, 2 important things to share with you before we go in. But now let's turn it over to you and hear what any of you would like to share. Oh, maybe Krista would like to say something about how this happens. Do people raise their hands or put their names in the chat? Is that how it goes? Or Pam, are you?
Well, We can start opening the call to our guests, and then we could actually just add that as under our comment that you'd like to share a story or raise your hand. I'd be able to see that.
That's excellent.
Perfect.
Okay, so if anybody would like to just put up their hand, or I think there's a more formal way. Oh, Monica, is that a hand raised? I think so, yes. Oh no, that's us. That's not a hand raised. We have a story from Stacy. Great, Stacy, we're open to your story.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Stacy. This is Sheila from Maine, the Time Initiative of Maine. And Sheila has a story that she'd like to tell about how we missed the last call.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yes. I grew up on the West Coast in San Francisco, and I'd had polio as a kid, so I swam every day in the San Francisco Bay. And I came to Maine, and that's not possible here in Maine. It wasn't anyway for me. And so on my 75th birthday, I hadn't swam in the ocean. I'd swam in pools, you know, doing laps. I'd done all this, but not in the ocean. For my 75th birthday, my daughter, who's a time banker, Stacy, who obviously is time banker, she's our executive director, and I, who am the membership director, all went out and went to the ocean with my great-grandson. And we had a ball. They took me down to the ocean, and the water was just perfect. And I went swimming for the first time in the ocean for the first time in 50 years.
Wow.
Wow.
It was fabulous.
It was.
Story.
It was great. And I just wanted to mention how thankful we were that that beach, you know, is now handicap accessible, because so many beaches you can't get to if you have disabilities or in a wheelchair. It's very difficult. And they built a ramp that goes all the way down to the sand.
Wow.
And then it's only maybe 10 feet, you know, to the water. So
Right.
it was just a gorgeous day. And
Wow.
sorry we missed you, but we were having fun.
But big but. Yes. Oh, wow, that's just wonderful. So, you know what that says to me is too, how much our society puts things into place for us all to share. I mean, that ramp, whoever probably pushed hard for it, and other people then stepped forward to say, yes, we must have it. And then the council had to arrange, or whoever had to arrange to make it happen. And then you guys, you go down, and there it is, magically there to go and be able to swim in the ocean after 50 years. That's a beautiful
Love it.
story.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. How fun.
So, do we have another story to share? Oh, good, David.
Hello, all. I'm going to give a shortened version of a story I shared last time, but I got asked to repeat it, and there's a little bit of an update as well. 7 or 8 years ago, I was having a difficulty getting the trunk of my car, where I had a few tools in. The lock didn't work, and the latch from the front seat would not help me. So I have a friend who we were both volunteering at the same radio station, and he's very active in the lowrider community and very knowledgeable. He does a Golden Oldies show every Sunday night for many years. So I gave him a quick call rather than pay a locksmith to come out and charge me $80 or so. And he came over with one of his daughters. He was in the middle of a family weekend. And I turned around, and the lock was popped, and I had access to my tools. And my response was, I'm going to try to reciprocate in some way. I'll offer him a little bit of money. And he said, no, pass it on. So neither of us had thought about time banking, but the sentiment certainly struck me, and I have been trying in my life, of course, to pass it on. But I shared the story with him. He told me I could tell his name. His name is Juan Roman. He's still very active at the radio station. I'm less active, but still keep my hand in there. And I want to do a little thank you to Monica Johnson at the Bay Area Community Exchange, who's on our call. She reminded me that when time banking is not a one-way street, it's a two-way street, and the way to create wholeness for Juan again, if that ever happens again, is that he will have received an hour, or it took less than an hour, but the point is he will be some way compensated for the time he gave me. And I appreciate that reminder from Monica. There's a little bit of news about what's happening at the radio station, as a matter of fact. And another very active time banker, Allison Melissa, has been offered a radio spot weekly, and she's a teacher of economics at the high school level, and she's also a fluent Spanish speaker. And the radio station is bilingual, although probably 70% or more are monolingual Spanish speakers. So she went on the air, she's been on the air possibly 3 times with various DJs talking about time banking and the more broad subject of alternative forms of economies. And she got such a response, particularly from the DJs, who were glad to have somebody to talk to in a way of providing a service, a broad service to a large number of people. So she's going to be developing that program now. And also I talked to a couple of representatives from a local nonprofit who are very well respected in the community, in the Latino community, and they are exploring now the possibility of developing a time bank that would be particularly suited for their community. And they're talking about they say get the moms together, and if the moms go for it, it'll happen. So I'm kind of deferring to their expertise, and I'm willing to make connections with them and you to find out what resources may be available, any software advice that you could give, and so forth. But we had our first 2 meetings since the last town hall, and we're continuing to talk. And so that I'm pretty excited about that. It means I will be able to step back and watch other people have better understanding and expertise, especially with the technical aspects of developing a time bank. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So that's my little report.
That's terrific news, David. Do you want to comment, Edgar?
Well, there is a Spanish version, isn't there?
Actually, there's a Spanish translation of Edgar's book from way back called No More Throwaway People. There's a Spanish version of No More Throwaway People. And Krista, of course, being from Puerto Rico originally, she is duo bilingual. So it'll be really great to get more and more bilingual time banking. Time banks will be great. So that's really, really good news, David.
And time banking was going formally in Spain.
Oh, it's huge in Spain. Yes, but time banking is very, very big in Spain, and in areas of South America too. It's really spread. Yeah, in several of the countries there. So, well, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
David, we have a lot of marketing material and also some really great YouTube videos on time banking that's in Spanish.
And I'll be connecting with you and making that, or perhaps I'll get my co-conspirators to connect with you, and the more people that are talking to you, the better. Yeah, that'll be wonderful. Yeah, and I just want to say the Latino community there's a spirit of reciprocity already, and
Yes.
a need for trust, and I think I see it happening already. What they do lack perhaps is the technology to keep track of these records, which I'm increasingly understand how important that is. It is an alternative to the mainstream economy, and I think it's going to become more and more important that we recognize when it happens, and the volume of when it happens, you know, how much it happens. It's going to be more and more, I think.
Well, I think the notion of extended family is basic, and in some cultures it's pervasive. It's a given, and in others, as they learn about price and money, it gets lost. But I think that we can really contribute to building on that language system and building on that culture and celebrating that culture.
Yeah, this is, oh, somebody has to go, but they came and left. Well, I'm sorry that she's just put a message in the message. That's Pip. I have to run. I'm sorry, she has to run. But what you both what you shared and about there's a couple of things you said, David, which I written down because I thought they were so interesting. One was, I just loved it. You said, receive an hour to bless an hour. I love that language, receive an hour to bless an hour. But the other that you said is a time bank suited for the community. And that is so true. It's been one of the things that actually has been both time banking strength, but made it a little bit harder to spread it in a kind of viral way that we had many times hoped to see, because every time bank has to be a reflection of its community. And there's no sort of one cookie cutter way that you say, do
Right.
this, do this, do this, do this, because communities have their own dynamics and their own sense of what's proper and what's right, and how they can work. And so sort of working one's way into a community to experience this feels right to our community can take some time, honestly. So are there some others that would like to? Oh, good, there's a hand. Val, go ahead.
Hi, how are you? I am Val Guerin from, well, not really from Southbury, Connecticut, but that's where we live. And I am connected to Jerome Scriptunas from YTBNJ, now
Okay.
YTBRN. And I like to tell this story. I always preface it with, I worked with Jerome, I'd say 100 years ago. And I always loved his work ethic then. I loved the way he thought. He was a great person to work with in the community because we were in child protection at the time. And this is going back a million years before he was even in other positions. When my eldest was born, she had special medical needs. I couldn't go back to work, and he did offer me work. And I said, I wish I could, well, I'm not able. And then 15 years later, he tells me about YTV. So I'm thrilled just to have this voluntary time with him again. It's been so fulfilling. So that backstory said, we, Southbury, Connecticut, were able to make a little free library, which was built through funding gained through YTB. And my 3 children were involved, and it was amazing. I have a high schooler and 2 middle schoolers. So they built the little free library. And if you saw my 11-year-old with a power tool in hand, you'd appreciate there's just many ways it could have, gone, but it was just so empowering for all of us. For the kids, my eldest has a special relationship to the middle school. She had her worst medical stuff there. She's fine now, but when she wasn't well, that school was very supportive. So the reciprocity piece was for us to be able to build something, bring it back, watch the kids use their skills, work together. I can proudly say there were no arguments. Everyone took a turn. I just stood back and took pictures. And when we brought it there, we learned that the nurse who took excellent care of my eldest was leaving. And we would have done this anyway. So we actually dedicated the little free library in her honor. So it was such a wonderful way to say it was the gift that kept on giving. So now this little free library is making teachers happy because all their discarded books can go in and they can share it with the community. My youngest gets to, raise her shoulders a little bit higher when she passes, knowing that she's a steward of this. My son has to take on responsibility because he's a teenager and he knows he's going to keep an eye on it. And there's that bit of pride and that bit of joy in being able to give back. And it's going to go in a place where when they have sports events, there's siblings that can come and get a book. So this is such a wonderful community piece that has so many bits of reciprocity floating around it. And to be able to dedicate that to somebody who spent years taking care of people, there's just so many bits to it. And this is all down to YTB. And it's, it's the best example of reciprocity we've enjoyed and had the privilege to do.
Wow.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that is a really,
Well, thank you for the influence. This is amazing stuff for all of us.
well, it's so interesting because reciprocity is so basic to all societies. And in all societies, we do have these sort of rules, almost informal norms about what counts, when it should be done, how it should be done. And I think that what time banking, as David was pointing out too, it's opening up the space for reciprocity. And that's what your story really describes so beautifully, the opening up of space to do more reciprocity in a way that is weaving together a sense of community. And that is a lovely, lovely illustration of that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story.
Well, we did, just as a finishing note, we put bookmarks in so that it's organically grown. A kid can take a bookmark and then decide if they're going to join YTB or they're just going to look it up online. And it's a wonderful seed. So thank you for that.
Is there any write-up of that?
I believe, well, it just went to the school, so there's no write-up as yet. I've just sent Jerome some pictures, and but I do believe it's, I know he's going to put it on our website as well.
It's the kind of thing that newspapers like to feature in stories. And once it's featured in one story, it has its own way of being contagious. So that the more we celebrate it, the more it becomes something to emulate.
Yes, to emulate. That's a lovely story. Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have thoughts inspired by that story, or ideas or comments? So Stacy.
Hi. This one core value is really the one that came forward for me when I was writing my thesis on time banking. And that thesis was based on this immersion with other coordinators and talking about what's good, what's bad, why do time banks succeed, why do time banks fail. But that idea of generalized reciprocity is something that I really dug into, that there are many forms of reciprocity. They don't all form community, but generalized reciprocity is one where you are tied to the larger good, and that larger good helps you back. And in my mind, I kept thinking of a man running into a burning building. Why do people do that? And most often when you ask them, they'll say they weren't thinking, they just did it. So it's like part of our DNA to be of service to the larger community is how we survived as a species. It's built in that we reflexively jump in and help when we need to. And, this pandemic has brought out a lot of things. And one of that is these acts of kindness that are popping up everywhere, people feeding each other, food banks popping up, libraries, so free libraries. I saw a story on it the other day that these are, happening quite a bit, sharing with each other. And it always seems to happen in a crisis. And what I like about time banking is it brings that into the ordinary day, that this is just a part of our ordinary existence is to be of service to the community. And time banking gives that a name, it gives it a value that's beyond price. And that's something that I think people are starting to get, especially this year, is that there is some work that is beyond price.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that. So actually what you just shared, Stacey, the word that brought to mind for me was empathy. And it's an empathic thing to step forward and be kind to others without thought, and that we trust and hope that other people will be empathic to us in turn. So I think that, so Val's story spoke so much to the feelings behind those acts. There were powerful, good feelings involved in all of those actions. So can we turn it? Is there somebody else who would like? Kristen has written. Val, you want to say something more? Oh no.
No, I was just waiting to the new person on the. I saw her swear. Hi.
Well, that's fair. Oh, there's Donna. Hello, Donna. It's not Donna. I'm sorry. You've got Donna Anna Communities, and it's Claire. Yes, lovely. Good to see you. So I just see that Krista has written in the chat. I've been thinking recently about that, how the term reciprocity doesn't fully capture the full value of social capital in a community. So Krista, could you just talk a little bit to that? What do you mean by that?
I was just thinking there are a bunch of things. Well, this has been prompted by a lot of things that have been said already, but Stacey, you were saying that kind of this realization of the importance of reciprocity seems to really happen in crisis situations. And I feel like a big part of that has to do with the fact that there's kind of a realization in those situations that what needs to be accomplished is much bigger than what can be exchanged directly. And so I was just thinking about this recently because I was, in my own experiences with time banking, I kind of vacillated between this like tension of explaining it as like, look, this is a service that you can get, that you can directly benefit from because it directly serves your needs, versus like, this is a general action that we're taking to kind of build relationships in our community. And like, so you'll benefit from it, but there's this kind of larger thing that we're going to benefit from by us all being more connected and knowing kind of what the resources are in our direct immediate community and having access to them and having a bridge of communication between people. And so I was just thinking recently about like the record a transaction idea and thinking both it's so powerful in helping people. It's like a bridge to help people directly understand like, oh, you can get something directly from this, but it also kind of fails to capture what's actually happening, which is building this broader social capital in a community and this feeling of we're doing something bigger than just exchanging services. You know, we're forging connections between people. I'm thinking there are a couple of extra things that I was thinking. My boyfriend's from Sudan and there's a lot of money exchange all the time, constantly. And it is really stressful to me because he's constantly sending money to help people in Sudan, and weddings are a lot about money and there's a lot of exchange of money that way. And I feel like what I failed to understand before is that there's like, what it is like this demonstration of investment in the community. Like I'm putting money in and I don't exactly know how it's going to come back to me, but like the investment in the community is important. And I was also thinking about like the origin of like the evolution of money originally. I found out wasn't originally about like a direct exchange, like this is a more efficient way to exchange a chicken for a bathtub, you know. It was really about like, I'm putting these shells out here as like an enduring symbol of like, this is a relationship we have. And like some point in the future, we might want to collaborate again. And this string of shells is like how I'm symbolizing that this is a thing that we do. And so I just wish that there was a better way of communicating that in these relationships, because I think it's something that we've kind of lost in our like hyper transactional society. Anyway, that's a lot of stuff.
No, that is, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts, Kristen. You want to say something to that?
Well, I think this goes very deep. And I think that what's been missing in my mind is a failure of academia to incorporate reciprocity in its whole way of teaching about political science, about community, about system change, that we ought to really be developing a way of talking about reciprocity. And reciprocity involves distinctive competencies. And it's fashionable to define competencies as trust, as risk, and I think that if we really tried to think through what were the elements, we would have, in effect, a new academic field of inquiry that would legitimate what we do in a different kind of way. So I think what you're talking about, I think it would be wonderful to set up a task force to really define what are the elements that we're trying to create that are so critical to society, because without reciprocity, without trust, without going at risk, all we've got is money.
That is so interesting. Kristen, did you get that book out of the book by David Graeber by any chance?
Which one are you talking about?
It's a book called Debt.
Oh, I need that. That's like very high on my list of books to read. So I'm going to check that out right away.
Okay. It's a wonderful, wonderful book that talks about the evolution of money over time and how very much particular and peculiar is our version of money these days. And that many of us feel that we're getting into big, deeper stuff here, but many of us feel that our society is in a state of transition. And what we're transitioning from is pretty clear, but what we're transitioning to is totally unclear. And the question is actually time banking one of the sort of very tiny, but it's a manifestation actually, and can be used by people who, in a very conscious and aware way, that we are transitioning into new kinds of social relationships. And so time banking is a place to explore and try things out and experience ourselves in relationships in different ways than have been kind of common under the systems that we've had to date here in the United States. And it is certainly true that in the Hispanic community, there's very different patterns of giving and receiving, I believe, than in a lot of mainstream America, in the majority sort of white culture of America, with its emphasis on economic sort of growth and saving money and reaching the middle class in that kind of way. I think it's rather different. So these are all things to explore. And I don't think actually that it's perhaps an accident that time banking has done so well in Spain and in the Spanish world. And Paul, were you wanting to say something?
Could you repeat the name of that book, The
Yes.
Origination of Money?
It's called Debt. It's just one word. And the name of the author is David Graeber, Graeber. It's an amazing book. It's actually an astonishing book. It's a tome. It's, I think it's like 580 pages long, and every page is like reading a whole chapter. It took, I pick it up and put it down and pick it up and put it down, but it's an astonishing book. Unfortunately, David Graeber passed away. He had got an illness and he died, but it's an amazingly a bestseller because it's so rich. So more thoughts. I'm looking. Stacy, main time at timebanks.org. That is a link to what, Stacy? You're on mute.
Yeah, my thesis. I had a link on my time bank page, and now they've moved it again. And this is like the third time that they've moved my thesis around. Okay. So I'm trying to find a link, but I can, I've got the file. I just,
Well,
You have
that's
a link.
fantastic that you've put the link out there. Thank you so much.
We'd love to be able to read, to
We've
read
had it
and share
before, so
yeah.
it's a reread. So no, that would be wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to put this into another place so that we've got the links. Or Krista, do we copy these links at the end of the? Do we get a copy of these links? We do with the recording.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So it'll be in there.
In fact, I'm going to actually add our info@timebakes.org link for anyone who else wants to share a story. You know, we all kind of wake up in the middle of the night and go, "Oh, I wanted to share that." So we would love to hear your stories. Just know
Awesome.
that all of us at our team, we love to read them and also post them on our social media, of course. So
the
thank you.
number.
I'll go ahead and post.
So Val just asked that she's put in the link. Is that the correct book? It absolutely is. Yes, that is the correct book. And so one of the things I'd like to just observe is, as we're having this conversation, is how there's this range of conversation, this range of talking about time banking from really kind of up there, I'll call it up there, abstract, to just an experience like Val just shared, which is totally real, totally in the moment, totally about what's happening on the ground with people experiencing real stuff. So one of these things about these town halls is that we're able to go whiz from, hey, we made a little library, to, hey, there's this idea of social capital and money flowing back to Sudan, and what does that mean, and different cultures, to whatever. So we just want to celebrate the richness of this sharing, that we love to hear the stories, we love to hear your thoughts, and it's a group exploration.
I saw what you were doing.
Oh, sorry, I'm talking. We're not.
So no worries. Would anybody else like to share a story of something that happened in their community that illustrates this kind of, this either one-to-one reciprocity, which we see in time banking, or this generalized reciprocity, or, as Kristen was talking, the kind of nice relationship between them, which I think Val's story really, really illustrated, was this combination of the two things.
This is Monica. I have a kind of a story or a comment.
Okay.
Many times when I'm speaking, people will ask me, what happens if people only take from the time bank? They make requests and they get their request filled, but they never make an offer. And I think that that's a very interesting question. And one of the ways I answer it is that when people make a request for a service, they are giving. It seems like they're taking, and yes, they are taking, but they're also giving. They're giving a person an hour or whatever amount of time, we call it a credit hour, to the other time banker who has provided the service. And they're communicating that that skill that that other time banker has is valued and desired. And so it's interesting, while we think of time bankers who make a request as takers, they're not just taking, they're also giving at the same time.
That's a very important point. To be willing to take is to be willing to define yourself in a relationship that commits you to being available in certain ways. So to take is to say, I'm vulnerable, I'm in need, but I'm also here as part of a larger community, and I'm willing to trust a stranger. And that trust is
it's a creation of trust, even in the exchange is a creation of trust. So yes, you know, that is so interesting, Monica, that people who are in time banking or have done time banking completely understand this, because they've experienced how hard it can be to ask. They know that actually asking is what's necessary to keep the time bank moving along. And they also, many, let's put it this way, maybe not most, but I think actually most time bankers know that it can be hard to ask. And I'm going to share a little story around that actually, because I did a time bank exchange just very recently. And another time banker actually offered to help me. I did not ask, I was offered the help. And the help was to sort through our mail, because the mail keeps pouring in the door and pouring in the door and pouring in the door. And I can't keep up with this. And so I know I'm behind on the mail, and this big pile had developed. And I was moaning and groaning about this. And one of the time bank members said, I'll help you with your mail if you like. And I, no, I'm fine. And then she said, Chris, you're a time banker. And I went, oh, yes, I am. I'd better walk the talk here. So I said, okay, let's set up an exchange. She came over, and I could tell you, she was here for, all in all, with the travel, because it took her about 45 minutes to get here. She doesn't live close. So with the travel and then being here, it was a 4.5 hour exchange. And for the first half hour that she was here, I was so prickly, I can't tell you. Like, I don't really know if I really need this help. I could be doing this myself. I really could spend this time just by myself doing this. And is she really helping me? She's looking through my mail with me. But as this time went on, and we sort of talked over each piece, and so what do you want to do with Chris, and how, it was just a completely different experience. Instead of being this awful chore, it became a sort of companionable activity that we did together. And I got through it, and where there'd been this great big pile, there was this empty space on the table. And it was like, she said, look, Chris, empty space. And I said, yes. And we had fun, and it was all done. And now, actually, that was only a week ago, and we've already got, that empty space is filled up again already. But it was such a gift. It was such a lovely thing. And we both felt so good. I mean, she felt good about helping me. She said, I was so happy to help you, Chris. And I felt so happy to have received that help. It was great. And that is the nature of time bank exchanges so often, not always, but it's my experience that they're so often that way. It can be a bit of a bumpy ride at the beginning to accept help. And then you're so glad that you did. So
Chris, I wanted to say real quickly, I think the gift keeps on giving, because the timebanks.org team definitely appreciates the mail coming in. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks to my colleague for helping me with that. So
we have about 7 minutes left. I'd like to hear any last minute thoughts, suggestions.
I know, I'm sure. Oh, good. Claire's going to say something, because you're leaning towards the screen. So you must be able to say something.
Hi, everybody. I don't know, Chris, if you're talking to me. It's Carrie.
Carrie, I'm sorry.
That's
Carrie, that's
fine.
right.
In southern New Mexico. I so apologize. Time got away from me. And these conversations are so rich. And you may have already talked about this, but this sense of, like, maybe it's also a revaluing and a reconceptualization of what time means in our lives as people who view it a certain way, and how can we slow down and perhaps see it differently, as well as seeing relationship differently. And then I guess I would also say, and I think I've shared this before, I don't have the link at hand, but there is a group of folks looking at social connectivity. I tend to call it social cohesion, but I do agree with Kristen that there's this sense of, like, how can we do better as we're talking about time banking to talk about the community-wide component. It's not just individuals being reciprocal with each other. It's that building of those community ties, which may or may not be activated all the time. But as we see more and more examples of challenges, emergencies, adverse climate events, that's when we're going to start seeing that this fabric that we're knitting together is really going to become important. And so I look at it, I call it social cohesion. There's a whole body of research related to that, but there are different words that you can use. But I just really feel that's the future of time banking. In terms of if we, I know I constantly say this, if we're going to look for money to actually do this and to do this at a larger scale and really get it knit into the fabric of how we're working together, that we need to start thinking about how we position it in those ways. I'm sorry. Thank you. I spoke way too much.
No, you did
No.
not. That was wonderful. I'm hoping Sheena is going to say something too.
We also
Sheena,
noticed that
because you're
Marion had her
face-
hand up too.
Sorry?
Marion had her hand up.
Oh, I didn't
Oh.
see that. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
can you hear me?
Yes.
I took it back down because I was just not sure how I would share this. I could very quickly share something. I'm in the New York City Woman Share group, and then we're part of a larger group. Something about reciprocity. Back in March, I was in New York City, a hit and run accident, and it was a criminal case. The person didn't stop, who was on this high-speed bike. So I went through hospitalization, rehab, help at home, and all that. So I really had to have professional help at home, and now I'm doing just great. And so my time banking group, my Woman Share group, because I really need professional help here to come over and be helping me. But the flood of emails, of cards, and then also I'm in a building that I've been in for 55 years. And I'm also part of a community garden. I have different communities. My time banking really has given me a consciousness about being in these other groups. So even though I have a lot of good neighbors in my building, and I have a couple of good friends, but I found this opened up something in me, my heart opening more to receive such goodness. I really had an energy shift. Even though I call that an accident, it really shifted me into another level of consciousness, this accident in that opening. And so then the people in my building I have few friends, but the neighbors were just the nice neighbors. We crossed the line in having deeper conversations, coming in and helping me, bringing me food. I had to learn to walk in a walker outside. I don't need that now, but somebody had to go with me and they'd be taking walks. And so I found I was able to receive that. And in my open-heartedness, I was giving back. It was really reciprocal, but in that way of an open-heartedness that invited people to share a little bit about their families, about their mothers and fathers, maybe somebody who was sick or something. So I'm very, very grateful for the whole experience, because I've been in my Woman Share time banking group for 7 years or something like that. We've gone through a lot of changes, and we've all gotten a lot older so we're looking at how do we, when we get through more of the COVID period, having younger people come in. So I just wanted to end with that. About the reciprocity between being able to receive and take in, and that is a giving from my heart to do that. Yeah.
Wow.
That is
Gosh, Marion, I'm so glad that you got to be here and share that story. I think we're all going to think about you tonight and what you experienced, and we're so glad that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and Edgar, I met you at Hunter College many years ago.
I remember, I want to say I'm getting older and frailer, and these conversations mean so much to me because they reinforce my sense of still being here and my sense of self. And I've been feeling more and more isolated just by health conditions, so that these conversations are very special to me, and I want to really thank everybody for being part of it, because it gives me such joy.
Edgar's really been through the wars, and he's always been so purpose-driven, and being purpose-driven gets harder as you get older like this,
You want to feel you make a difference. You want to feel that you matter.
Yeah.
And it just gets harder and harder, doesn't it? So these are very, very meaningful conversations for us both, but I think very, very particularly for Edgar, because they are what your life has been about for the last 40 years. Yeah.
Well, it's meant that giving is not giving. Giving is really a privilege to receive a sense of meaning and purpose. And so just the opportunity to be part of this dialogue and to be able to say thank you is an important triumph for me. It's an achievement. It marks the day that I was able to say thank you. Thank you just for being who you are, and thank you for coming together.
Wow. Yeah.
I think we're all speechless. Thank you. Thank you, Edgar. Well, I think we have two more people who wanted to say a quick last thought. I'd love to have Donna. Do you want to start the call? Your comments?
Thank you. And Edgar, thank you. What a legacy you have provided for the world and for us. We are grateful. The reciprocity that we practice has resulted and continues to result in a loving and supportive community within a community. And we continue to grow and thrive. Thank you, Edgar.
It's such a privilege to feel the trust and to know that saying I need or that I am is a way of really reaffirming that it's important to be here and that we're strangers, but we're not strangers. What we're saying is we celebrate just the consciousness of being able to be here for each other. And for me, life is about meaning. Life is about finding meaning. Life is about advancing purpose. And if there's a purpose that I can embrace, it's the extension of trust amongst strangers who are willing to be vulnerable and willing to be themselves. And that's such a gift for me.
Okay. Gar, did you wanted to say something?
Yes, and I'll try to be really quick because I know we're wrapping up. A $10 word that I haven't heard in this conversation is egalitarian or egalitarianism. And at my heart, I'm an egalitarian. And to me, this is what makes time banking, community time banking, so beautiful. That we're all in this together. We're building a social fabric of connection that makes our lives rich, purposeful. My own brief story about how I fell in love with time banking stems from my getting involved with Rest and Useful Services Exchange. And basically, a neighbor introduced me to this group. I took a couple of free rides to appointments I needed with government agencies. And through the conversations with my wonderful, heart-centered chauffeur, I landed a job that would last for 6 months and 3 weeks before COVID hit. And it gave me just the resilience to have the gumption to ask a member of my church to gift me a car. And I got that. So, I mean, talking about paying it forward, it's a wonderful and beautiful philosophy. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We hope to see all of you for our next town hall, October 17th. And thank you so much. Any last comments, Edgar?
Just thank you for the gift of today, because it's been hard when your health goes down to admit that you need to feel that you matter, and that you matter not just because you have a need, but you matter because there's a relationship, and that to be able to say thank you is so important. And this was a joyous occasion for me, a time to celebrate just being here and being with you. and knowing that that we're here because we feel we matter, and each of us matters. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining our town hall. We will see you. We're going to actually stop the recording, but we'll hang out for another
Thank
10
you.
or 15 minutes. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Be
Thank
well.
you so
Stay
much.
safe.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining.